On this episode of Law Weekly, we bring you some highlights from the just concluded 60th conference of the Nigerian Bar Association. Over 20,000 persons participated in the conference, which was largely virtual. In line with social distancing guidelines, there were physical setups for a few people at a venue in Lagos and at the NBA building in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Shola Shieli. The conference began with an opening ceremony on Wednesday, the 26th of August. The chairman of the Technical Conference Planning Committee, Professor Koinsola Ajayi, was not unmindful of some of the controversies that had trailed the choice of some speakers at the event. He addressed these issues and more in his opening remarks.
While reflecting on a conference with many errors in planning, which has brought mews and cries of foul, of which I once again apologize, extending my hand of fellowship to all that are aggrieved on all sides of the debates, calling on our vision as a nation fostered by faith in one another, a nation built on unity and a diversity used for opportunity, and a nation in which we will have peace and progress. 60 years of conferencing, 60 years in which we've brought winners to this country, 60 years in which we've exported chief justices to Botswana, Uganda, and other countries like that, 60 years in which we've sent Nigerian lawyers to International Court of Justice, 60 years in which we've produced vice presidents and speakers and ministers and people all kinds of endeavor. 60 years in which we've helped to build this nation, 60 years in which we've fought oppression to a standstill, 60 years in which we've made democracy stand. So we're looking at these 60 years as we look forward to the next 60 years, because you know what? In 60 years' time, we will be one of the third largest populations in the world. So what do we come here to do? To interrogate where we would be in 60 years' time. And what you would hear is the steps we need to take forward to make sure that in 60 years, we're not just one of the third largest countries in the world, but indeed, we are one of the largest economies in the world.
The president of the Bar, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Paul Usoro, spoke on the unity of the Bar and the choice of the conference theme, Step Forward.
We have a bar that is not only united, but is professional. It does not pander to ethnic considerations. It does not consider religious considerations. It is a professional bar. And that is something that we should celebrate. But more importantly, it is something we must always bear in mind. Because the people who would like to divide us, they do not let up. They would like to divide us. And we must not allow them to divide us. We must always remember that we are one united Nigerian Bar Association. We must not be divided. We must not be divided on ethnic lines. We must not be divided on religious lines. We must not be divided on class segmentation lines. We must remember that we are an association where indeed one is for all and all is for one. That is the association that we have and that has survived more than 60 years. It is the conferencing that we are celebrating 60th anniversary. But as an association, we have survived those things that threaten to divide the rest of us in Nigeria, and we must continue to ensure that those things do not come near us. We must continue to ensure that we stay one united bar association. The theme for this year is a rather interesting one, Step Forward. It's more like a command. It's advising all of us, after 60 years of conferencing, to step forward. It reminds me, and if you join it with that of last year, then it tells you to step forward and face the future, not to be looking behind you.
Goodwill messages for the lawyers came in from the Governor of Lagos, his counterpart in Rivers State, and from the Federal Ministry of Justice.
Step forward means that how do I bring about clear fiber connectivity to all the 25 million listeners and delegates that would have to virtually connect to the NBA 2020 conference. And so for us as a government, stepping forward meaning that we need to develop a metropolitan fiber connectivity, which we have started, a 6,000 kilometer, and we're ring-fencing Lagos with fiber optics, and ensure that this new normal, this new reality that we have, you can indeed have 25,000 people with no disruption, with internet connectivity, and bringing the cost down for them to be able to afford it, and have access to it. In my view, that is what our stepping forward should bring. But more importantly, what should stepping forward mean for the NBA? Like Professor Koinsola have also said, you are older than Nigeria, you are a big brother to Nigeria in terms of age. You are celebrating your 60th before Nigeria. So you need to show Nigeria real leadership. You need to show Nigeria that indeed you're a big brother. You need to show and take over and take your rightful position in the Committee of Nations and drive this country very well.
It is important to remind us that we are not only the single largest professional association in Nigeria, and indeed in Africa, but more importantly, each and every one of us carries a unique responsibility to defend and protect the poor, the weak, the downtrodden in society, against all forms of injustice, oppression, harassment, and intimidation, whether in the public or private space. We should be determined more than ever before to continue to render this unique service, not only in our own interest, but in the interest of the larger society.
My office will continue to drive the much-needed legal reforms in promoting the rule of law, accomplishing full financial autonomy for the state legislators and state judiciaries, and also revigorating the office of the Attorney General of the Federation as the Chief Law Officer. The foregoing will continue to serve as a catalyst for the modest gains being recorded by my office, which includes the recent recovery of $301 million loot, which is being plowed into some critical national infrastructures. We are also putting in place measures to prevent mismanagement and reoccurrence. I need to emphasize that NBA needs to rise above all restrictions and step forward by weighing more positively on the lawmaking process and the administration of justice generally as to bolster its preeminent position as the conscience of the nation.
The federal government used the opportunity of the conference to push for judicial reforms.
There are a few areas where I believe we need to step forward and resolve some of the nagging problems of our system of administration of justice. Reform is urgent because the fabric of our society is stitched together by our system of justice and law enforcement. We cannot afford to have the stitches come undone. The first issue I'd like to commend to your consideration is the terribly slow pace of trials in our courts. Why can't we have time limits for all cases? Why can't we put in place the rules that will say that a criminal trial, all the way to the Supreme Court, must not exceed 12 months in duration? And why can't we do the same for civil cases? Even if we say that civil cases must not go beyond 15 months, between 12 and 15 months. I think that for me will be stepping forward. The question of speed raises a related concern. In the context of a competitive global economy, the speed of our legal institutions and processes must match up with the global pace of transactions. This has implications for our efforts to promote the ease of doing business and position Nigeria as a favored investment destination. Enhancing the speed of our court processes brings the options provided by technology into focus. Digitization of court processes, records, and services is very much the new frontier of justice delivery and will dramatically enhance access to justice and affect trial times. COVID-19 is highlighting the possibilities of virtual platforms in every dimension of service delivery. And going forward, we must maximize these possibilities in the justice sector. The second issue for me is the multiple and sometimes conflicting orders of courts.
The Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Ibrahim Mohammed, has given the assurance that the judiciary will constantly strive to deliver justice better. He, however, wants lawyers to stop filing frivolous processes which clogs up the court's dockets and delay the timely administration of justice.
That is necessary.
After the opening ceremonies, participants listened to the keynote speaker, the chairman of First Bank of Nigeria, Mrs. Ibukun Awoshika.
According to the executive director of the Institutional Advancement at Texas Law, a good lawyer is like a good chess player, always considering everything on the board and thinking ahead by 3 or 4 moves. And when you map out our society and you think about the different spaces where the lawyers play, you're going to look at like our National Assembly, and you will know that without a doubt, if you take statistics from other climes and you sort of extrapolate into our situation, the percentage of the members of the House that would be from the legal profession will be quite substantial. When you think in terms of our electoral process, and you think of the role that lawyers play in different parts of the electoral process, you realize how much they influence our lives. When you think in terms of the rule of law, and you imagine the fact that, of course, you cannot be a judge without being a lawyer, to represent us through the process, through the judiciary process, are also themselves lawyers. When you think in terms of the corporate organizations, there's hardly any major contract of any note or any critical decision that will not have a legal opinion or a legal voice involved. When you think in terms of transactions of even marriage, it's a legal contract in itself, buying a house. And so in reality, lawyers are a key part of every part of our lives. If you can honestly look in the mirror and say, for 60 years, with thousands of members, with thousands of lawyers and many new lawyers being graduated every year, how has the country been fully impacted by the knowledge that we have and the understanding that we possess in terms of building an equitable country where justice reigns? And when we build a more equitable society that works for all of us, we will all profit, including every member of the legal profession.
Welcome back. On day 2 of the conference, one of the breakout sessions focused on the all-important topic of who is a Nigerian, a debate on national identity.
The citizenship/indigenship argument continues to abate without resolution. The nation now finds itself in the middle of an increasing clamor for outright secession by some of the ethnic groups, and the time has now come for us to re-examine the basis under which we have our national identity. Good luck,
With that introduction, the moderator sparked off a conversation that looked at issues of federal character, the quota system, the rights of children and women, and what needs tweaking. This also threw up some more interesting questions as the panelists identified the challenges.
Am I Nigerian when I cannot boast of one federal project in my state because my state is controlled by an opposition political party? Am I Nigerian when my child cannot secure admission to university outside of his own locality because the university is located outside of his same state? Am I Nigerian when I cannot be appointed chief judge because I am not an indigenous of that state, even though I've rendered services to that state over the years? Am I Nigerian? Am I Nigerian? These are questions we need to address. And what lies at the bottom of all this question is justice.
The Constitution specifically prohibits the discrimination of any person by virtue of the fact that the person's gender or place of birth or circumstances of birth. So legally, strictly speaking legally, all these issues ought not to be, because you're a Nigerian and you're supposed to be able to live freely and work freely anywhere you live.
We have built on a sandy soil where basically it has been a rentier state, a state that is open to capture by any set of people that manage to dominate the rest and gain ascendancy into leadership. What that has done is that it has made us so dismally different from a country like Singapore, which is also a multi-ethnic society.
The point was also made that these issues have become largely political, and the panelists offered suggestions in line with the MBA's theme, Step Forward.
All the countries we have used as an example by various speakers, if you look at what united them more, it is when they've grown their economy. The multi-ethnic people in Ethiopia is not complaining the way we're complaining here, or Indonesia on this, because you build a society where there's what you can call a level playing field. That is what we don't have in Nigeria.
Foremost on the list is leadership. We must get the correct people to deliver. We must get the right people at the helm of affairs at all facets of government, be it executive, legislature, judiciary, and at all tiers.
This is the era of citizens. Citizens of Nigeria now demand that there be a conversation that enables us to agree certain common denominators that we see amongst us, and then to identify what the differences are, and to negotiate those differences, and to determine the way that our nationhood would form itself. We are yet a country, we're not yet a nation.
Another important session focused on the state of the nation. In that session, Vice President Professor Yemi Oshibajo and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, spoke on a wide range of issues of public interest. Security continues to be a major issue, and there was a question on the government's response to the Southern Kaduna killings.
Well, there is a need to address the underlying issues. There's a need to address those. But what are we doing? What is the government doing? First, is the improvement of security in Southern Kaduna. Now we have a military base there for the first time. We now have a military base. We also have a lot of Air Force surveillance. We have about 500 conventional and mobile policemen in Zagun, Kataf, and Kawara local government. And then the combined military teams from the Army, the Navy, who are also on ground 24 hours. That's basically to just take care of the volatile situation there. The president has also had several Security Council meetings. I've attended all of those where the issues have been discussed. And the possibilities of engagement have also been discussed. But I think we must address also the fundamental issues. We can't sweep those issues under the carpet. Justice, the cries of economic marginalization,
the fact that we must prosecute persons responsible for these murders, otherwise the impunity will worsen, and also support to those who have lost their properties and breadwinners. I think some of these issues must also be addressed as we go forward.
For the legislature, funding is key to boosting the morale of security agencies.
Within the limited resources, dwindling or revenue and the rest of it, what is budgeted for, or what is budgeted from the executive is hardly ever touched by the National Assembly in trying to rearrange distribution of resources. The defense budget remains almost sacrosanct anytime it comes to the National Assembly. But what we're looking at now, and what I think needs to be done, and I think this is what is done in times of war in even more advanced democracies, is that you look beyond and outside your budget and your revenue, and you look for alternative sources of revenue to fight your war. If we agree that we're in war times, then we need to look outside the box. If we do not have enough resources, and I think there's a bill right now on the floor of the House. I think it's first reading in terms of alternate funding for our military. I believe that will get speedy passage through the House and the Senate, and go to the president for access.
The vice president also weighed in on the controversy being generated by some provisions in the new Companies and Allied Matters Act, CAMA, of 2020.
It is the Incorporated Trustees section of the Companies and Allied Matters Act that has become controversial. And because churches are charities, the provisions in the Incorporated Trustees Act obviously affect the churches. Now, what the churches are concerned about is a provision that says, I think there are about 2 or 3 provisions, but the main one is the one that says that in the event that some wrongdoing is found by or perpetrated by the trustees of the particular organization or church, the Registrar General can go to court, get an order to appoint interim administrators or interim trustees for the church or for whichever organization, whichever charity that may be, and then, as it were, manage the affairs of such a trust. Now, the concern of the churches is that it could lead to a situation where practically anybody could be appointed as a trustee to oversee a church. And a church, obviously, or a mosque or a religious organization is obviously a spiritual organization. And if you are not, if you do not belong, if you don't share that faith, or you simply do not even have any faith at all, you may be the wrong person, and the wrong person may be appointed and create more trouble. What can be done is that whatever the proposals for amendment may be, whatever the views of the church leadership may be regarding the question of how the trustees and where there are interim trustees or whatever can be managed, that should be put into proposals that can be brought before the National Assembly, before the National Assembly leadership, for a consideration of amendments to the law. That is a process which is entirely open, and I believe that that's a process that ought to be pursued.
Although the NBA annual conference has been hailed by a lot of its members as largely successful, the controversy generated by the decision of the NEC of the association to withdraw the invitation extended to the governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, has refused to go away. A group of lawyers from the northern part of the country on Thursday announced that it had formed a parallel bar association with the name New Nigerian Bar Association. Details on the new group is still sketchy. As at press time, the leadership of the NBA was unwilling to comment on the move, saying that it would consult and verify the information before putting out its position. Some lawyers who did not want to be identified have, however, described the group as faceless.
That I will not allow
The climax of the 2020 NBA conference was the swearing-in of the 30th president of the association, Olumide Akpata, and the dissolution of the Paul Usoro administration.
And the independence of the bar. So help me God.
That's the program this week. Thank you for joining us. If you missed any part of it, don't forget that you can watch it and any past episode of the program on our YouTube channel. I'm Shola Sheyeli. Thank you for watching.